before tools, before laws, before memory learned to preserve itself in story. There was watching. Across the natural world, survival begins with attention. Young animals follow movement before they understand it. They learn where to step, when to flee, what to eat, by observing others. Imitation is not a weakness of life, it is one of its oldest strategies. In the long, early hours of humanity, watching was everything. How stone was shaped, how fire was carried, how bodies moved together across open land. Nothing was inherited ready-made. Everything was learned in relation to another. This capacity to imitate transformed human survival. It allowed knowledge to travel faster than instinct. It bound individuals into groups, and quietly, it introduced a new kind of danger. Unlike hunger, desire does not always rise from the body. It does not arrive whole from within. Often, it appears indirectly. A figure reaches for an object. Another notices. The object changes. What was neutral becomes charged. What was unnoticed becomes necessary. The value of things is rarely fixed. It is borrowed from the attention of others. A tool matters because another values it. A place becomes important because it is defended. Status exists only when it is reflected back. Desire moves through the space between people. It is relational. It mirrors itself. And in mirroring, it multiplies. When several eyes fix on the same thing, tension follows. Two hands reach forward. Neither can retreat without loss. Neither can advance without resistance. At first, the conflict is slight, a hesitation, a repeated gesture, a boundary tested. But imitation is precise. Each movement is returned in kind. Each posture is reflected. The rivals grow increasingly alike. Differences soften. Distinctions blur. What remains is symmetry, and symmetry is unstable. In this state, the object itself begins to fade. What matters is no longer possession, but exclusion. The other becomes the obstacle, not because they are different, but because they are too similar. Conflict rarely remains contained. Raised voices draw attention. Movement attracts movement. Emotion spreads faster than explanation. Others begin to imitate the stance of opposition. Sides form before causes are understood. Certainty replaces understanding. What began as rivalry becomes atmosphere. Anger echoes. Suspicion multiplies. Every gesture is reinterpreted. The group can no longer identify who began the struggle, only that it must continue. Violence does not first appear as action. It appears as imitation. As rivalry intensifies, distinctions collapse. Friend and enemy become difficult to separate. Accusation circulates freely. Blame seeks a place to rest. Rules lose authority. Traditions no longer restrain behavior. Memory offers no guidance. What remains is immediacy, reaction without reflection. This is the threshold of crisis, the moment when a community approaches dissolution, not through cruelty, but through resemblance without limit. Nature does not tolerate endless escalation. Either a system breaks or it finds release. Human communities, long before understanding themselves, discovered interruption. The crisis demanded resolution, but no individual act could succeed. Any single blow risked retaliation. Something collective was required, something decisive. Often there is a silence before this shift, a brief suspension. Eyes turn, attention narrows. The energy of conflict searches for form. It seeks a focal point, not yet named, but already anticipated. Imitation gave humanity cooperation. It allowed skill, language, and meaning to spread. It bound individuals into societies. But it also carried within it the seed of rivalry. And rivalry, left unchecked, invites destruction. The same force that binds can unravel. In the movement that follows, human communities, facing the threat of their own mirrored violence, will arrive at a solution both effective and terrible. A solution that restores order and conceals its cost. When a community reaches the edge of itself, when conflict no longer belongs to any one person, the need is no longer to win, it is to end. At the height of collective tension, explanation fails. Language loses precision. Memory fragments. Fear circulates without direction. What remains is pressure, a force seeking release. In such moments, attention begins to narrow, from the many toward the few, from the group toward the individual. The shift is subtle, almost imperceptible, but once it begins, it accelerates. A figure stands slightly apart, not necessarily powerful, not necessarily guilty. Different in a small way. Foreign, marked, unprotected. Difference, once ignored, now becomes decisive. The community does not choose consciously, it recognizes. Accusation gathers, stories align, suspicion condenses. What was once diffuse now has a shape. Violence changes character. No longer scattered, no longer reciprocal, it moves together. Many hands, one direction. The conflict that threatened to tear the group apart now binds it together. This is the turning point. Not because justice is found, but because unanimity is achieved. The crowd becomes one. The act itself is brief, often chaotic, sometimes ritualized, always final. The victim is silenced. The noise stops. And with it, something else ends. The crisis dissolves. Fear recedes. Order returns. Breathing slows. The group survives. Relief follows violence so closely that the two become inseparable in memory. The restoration of peace appears miraculous. The victim seems responsible, not for the crisis, but for its resolution. What was destroyed is now remembered as powerful, dangerous, polluting, sacred. In the quiet that follows, meaning begins its work. The community does not recall its own role clearly. Participation is shared. Responsibility dissolves. What remains is effect without cause. Peace without explanation. The one who fell becomes the explanation. Their removal restored harmony. Their death ended fear. From this logic, a transformation occurs. The victim is no longer merely human. Memory reshapes itself. Violence is forgotten. Necessity is remembered. The event is retold, not as collective aggression, but as deliverance. From this retelling, patterns form. The community learns what it cannot say directly. It learns that violence works, but only under strict conditions. Never openly, never chaotically, never without form. Repetition begins. The act is remembered symbolically. A substitute stands in place of the original victim. An animal, an object, a figure marked by signs. The violence is contained, measured, controlled. This is not cruelty for its own sake. It is regulation, a way of preventing the return of chaos by reenacting its resolution. From repetition, ritual emerges. From ritual, prohibition. Certain acts become forbidden. Certain places become charged. Certain moments are set apart. The sacred is born not from peace, but from violence remembered imperfectly. What is feared becomes revered. What must not be touched becomes holy. The community lives surrounded by signs of a violence it no longer recognizes as its own. Order holds, not because conflict has disappeared, but because it has been displaced, contained within ceremony, hidden within symbol. The solution is effective, but it is fragile. It depends on forgetting, on misrecognition, on the belief that harmony came from elsewhere, not from the crowd itself. As long as this belief endures, the structure holds. As long as the origin remains hidden, the cycle continues. In the next movement of this story, we turn to the narratives that preserve this forgetting, the stories that transform violence into meaning, and meaning into permanence. Long after the violence has passed, after the body has disappeared, after the silence has settled, the story begins. Every society tells itself how order came to be, not as it happened, but as it must be remembered. These stories are older than writing, older than law. They are shaped not to record events, but to preserve stability. In these narratives, chaos rarely has a human source. Disaster arrives from elsewhere, from monsters, from gods, from transgressions unnamed. The community is never at fault. The one who died appears transformed, once feared, now powerful, once blamed, now exalted. The victim becomes a figure of terror or wonder, sometimes both. Violence is no longer remembered as collective action, but as necessity. The story does not lie deliberately. It rearranges. It removes symmetry. It assigns intention. It turns unanimity into justice. What cannot be faced directly is placed at a distance. Across continents and centuries, the patterns repeat. Different landscapes, different names, the same structure. A crisis threatens the group. A single figure is blamed. Their removal restores order. They are remembered as other than human. The similarity is too consistent to be coincidence. These stories teach without explanation. They warn against disorder. They reinforce boundaries. They justify rituals already in place. Above all, they protect the group from recognizing itself in its own violence. In these narratives, the voice of the victim is absent. Silence is its defining feature. the community speaks as one. The fallen do not speak at all. Yet not all traditions preserve the silence equally. Some begin to hesitate, to slow, to turn their attention not to the crowd, but to the one who falls. In these accounts, something shifts. The victim is no longer monstrous, no longer ambiguous, no longer guilty by default. Violence is still present, but it is no longer concealed. For the first time, the act of the group itself becomes visible. Accusation is questioned. Unanimity appears suspect. Power looks fragile. This change is subtle, but its consequences are profound. Once the mechanism is exposed, it cannot function in the same way again. The solution depends on ignorance, on belief without scrutiny. When understanding enters, the old containment weakens. Modern societies inherit this tension. They reject ritual violence. They dismantle sacrifice. They speak openly of innocence and guilt. And yet, the forces that once required containment have not disappeared. Rivalry still spreads by imitation. Conflict still escalates through attention. Crowds still search for resolution. But the old structures no longer hold. There is no shared ritual to absorb the pressure. No agreed substitute to carry blame. Violence returns in new forms: public outrage, moral crusades, digital crowds moving in unison. Targets are identified. Accusations multiply. Relief follows destruction. The pattern persists, even as its meaning erodes. The danger is no longer hidden violence, but uncontained violence. Not sanctified, not ritualized, not restrained by form. For the first time, humanity can observe its own mechanisms. It can see desire mirrored, conflict spread, unity forged through exclusion. This awareness offers no easy solutions. Understanding does not abolish rivalry. It removes illusion. What remains is responsibility. To recognize imitation before it hardens into conflict. To see accusation before it becomes certainty. To resist the comfort of unanimous blame. Human societies have always stood on a narrow threshold between cooperation and destruction. What once preserved order now demands awareness. The stories continue, but they no longer fully conceal. And in that exposure, a different future becomes possible. Not guaranteed, not complete, but conscious. What remains after the stories lose their certainty is not chaos. It is attention. The same capacity that once amplified rivalry can also interrupt it. To notice desire as it forms, to see imitation before it accelerates, to recognize unity that depends on exclusion. This awareness does not abolish conflict, it changes how it is met. Violence no longer arrives disguised as destiny, nor harmony as miracle. Both return to human hands. Across deep time, societies learn to survive by misunderstanding themselves. In the present, survival may depend on understanding too much. Not mastery, not control, but vigilance. The mirror remains. Desire still reflects desire. The crowd still gathers. But reflection, once seen, is no longer invisible. In every age, there is a temptation to believe that violence belongs to the past, that it was a problem solved by progress, by law, by knowledge. And yet, the forces that once shaped early communities have not vanished. They have only changed their surface. Desire still forms in relation to others. Attention still concentrates. Rivalry still sharpens when differences fade. Modern life accelerates these movements. Images travel faster than bodies. Words spread without pause. Reactions precede understanding. Imitation, once local, is now instantaneous. Crowds no longer gather only in shared spaces. They assemble across distance, across screens, across moments. Unanimity forms without proximity, and with it the familiar relief, the sense that blame has found its mark. The language is different, the symbols are new, but the structure remains. A crisis appears, anxiety rises, a figure is named, attention converges, judgment hardens, exclusion restores calm. The danger is not that these patterns exist, they always have. The danger is that they operate without restraint, without ritual to slow them, without myth to soften them, without silence to interrupt them. In earlier worlds, violence was hidden behind ceremony and symbol. In the present, it is exposed, but exposure alone does not prevent repetition. Sometimes it accelerates it. Awareness introduces a new tension. To see the mechanism is to lose the comfort it once provided. Blame no longer feels pure. Unity no longer feels innocent. Resolution becomes uncertain. This uncertainty is not weakness, it is a threshold. For the first time, human communities are capable of pausing at the moment when imitation turns to accusation. Capable, not guaranteed. The future does not depend on eliminating desire or rivalry or conflict. It depends on resisting the final shortcut, the moment when complexity is reduced to a single face, a single name, a single act of removal. To live without that shortcut is slower, more fragile. It requires patience where instinct urges speed, attention where habit demands reaction. But it also opens the possibility of order without sacrifice, of cohesion without expulsion, of meaning that does not depend on a silent victim. The old solutions were powerful because they were unseen. The new challenge is to live with what can no longer be hidden. Human history has always unfolded between fire and restraint, between imitation that binds and imitation that destroys. That tension remains. What has changed is that it can now be observed. At the end of every explanation, there is still the world. Wind moves through grass without intention. Water shapes stone without memory. Life continues without assigning blame. Human beings remain different. They watch, they reflect, they imitate. From this capacity, everything else emerges. Desire forms in the presence of others. Conflict arises from resemblance. Order is sought when fear becomes unbearable. These are not failures of history. They are conditions of being human. What changes is not the mechanism, but the awareness of it. For most of human time, survival depended on not knowing. on believing that violence arrived from elsewhere, that peace descended from beyond the group, that meaning was given, not made. In the present, that distance has collapsed. The source is visible. The crowd can be observed. The moment of convergence can be named. This knowledge offers no comfort. It removes certainty without replacing it. Yet within this uncertainty lies a fragile possibility: to hesitate, to refuse unanimity, to let conflict remain unresolved rather than resolved at another's expense. Such restraint has no monument, no ritual, no myth to preserve it. It leaves no story behind, only absence. And perhaps that is its measure. Not harmony proclaimed, but violence withheld. Not unity enforced, but difference endured. The world does not require sacrifice to continue, only attention, only the willingness to see ourselves before we act.